Have you ever wondered what it would be like to mix the fun and intensity of a brawler with the randomness of a roguelike game? Well, Absolum looks to answer that very question. Hi, my name's Dove and I love indie video games, and today I want to talk to you about Absolum, a new combined effort from indie developer Guard Crush Games, Supamonks, and longtime publisher Dotemu, with their first original IP. As mentioned, Absolum tries to combine both the brawler and roguelike genres together. On paper, this is a great idea, and while I am going to say out front I think that Absolum is an enjoyable game, I'm not sure it fully lives up to one of those genres, but let's dive in. Plot-wise, Absolum is pretty much footloose with magic instead of music and weird creatures inserted for characters. If you're not over the age of 50 and don't get that reference, magic is pretty much taboo in this crazy mixed up world that has an eternally pregnant goddess that brings your main character back to life at the end of any unsuccessful run, and her band of rebels pitted against an authoritarian magic-hating king that rules the land. Initially, you get to pick from one of two characters, a bearded blunderbuss-wielding dwarf and a lanky sword-swinging elf. You'll be able to unlock a few more characters along your journey, and depending on your playstyle, some of the characters you unlock later on might actually be a lot more fun to play around with those roguelike power-ups. Definitely a matter of opinion, but the ninja-like agility from Cider and the magic-wielding ass-kicking nature from Braum just totally changed the game in a good way. I would have honestly liked to see them just open up the character pool right off the bat, especially seeing as how it's a co-op brawler and you only initially have two characters to select from. Luckily for both the brawler and the roguelike aspects, the characters have enough difference in their abilities, speed, and strength to give the character pool a good amount of flavor. Yes, this is a brawler, but I have to say the characters have little depth for a new IP that has so much lore surrounding it. Luckily, the meticulously crafted world that Guard Crush and Supamonks created helps immerse players. It's a bit more comic book style than that old arcade feel, but it works. Sometimes it can be hard to tell where or even what your character is actually doing with all the enemies and allies on the screen, but the setting and character animations are well done. Combat-wise, it's a brawler at its very heart. Simplistic with a basic attack, a jump, a dash, and a mana attack, which you charge up by taking down enemies. That main attack will be character-specific, and you'll be able to open up a few different attacks with each character. So control-wise, there's nothing revolutionary here. But I have to mention that the co-op controls are really great, especially online. And with the responsiveness that you get, it makes that online co-op almost an absolute must. And that's kind of where the game starts to fall apart a bit for me. One issue that I have is the balancing. It is definitely made for two players, and while there might be less enemies if you do go solo, controlling the map with the slower movements of a brawler character isn't only difficult in some cases, it's nearly impossible. I love a good brawler, but the balance really is not there for most solo players in Absolum. With enough dedication to this one, and enough upgrades from your hub, of course you'll be able to take down the Sun King on your own, but it's a pretty steep incline to get there. Another spot where Absolum might not hit the mark is actually the roguelite nature. While it's definitely fun to pick different upgrades to give yourself a little bit of randomness and to try some new strategies here and there, the upgrades don't really feel that impactful. Yes, you'll unlock more powerful upgrades as you go, but at the heart of it, a lot of these different specials just feel like the same effect with a different coat of paint. None of the effects really feel like they do anything to your enemies. You might punch an enemy and they'll have a little whirlwind around them, but it doesn't really seem to do anything or have an actual effect outside of that. The character hub that I referenced before also feels a little flat at times. There's no real nuance to the upgrades that you can give your character between runs. It's simply just pay for the upgrades with the currency that you earned in your previous runs. There's no limit to how many you can apply, it's just all dependent on how many crystals that you attained. And that brings me to the reason I have a hard time recommending Absolum to all gamers. And it's a tiny bit of a spoiler as I'm going to talk about the final boss a bit, so be warned. In your final fight against that last boss, the game pulls an extremely cheap shot. At some point in time when you whittle down the Sun King, he will launch an unblockable instant death attack. And there's absolutely no way to avoid this. The only way to continue is to upgrade your character in the hub with an extra life. And more importantly, not to lose that extra life before you get to the final boss. I will note you can purchase a refill during your run for that life, but if you don't have the coin, you're out of luck. So if you're lucky enough to get to the final boss, but you don't have an extra life, you pretty much have already ended your run. It may be by design, but to me, it just feels like an unnecessary way to force players to replay. There's no warning before you go into that fight or anything like that, so to me, that's just a game ruiner. This game is a lot of fun early on, and for fans of the brawler genre, there's a lot to like up until that point. But for people who just invested an hour and a half or 2 hours and don't get much free time at all, it feels more annoying than challenging. And it honestly feels like a decision made by someone who doesn't actually play video games at all. And this comes from someone who is stubborn and loves a challenge. As much as I love roguelike and roguelite games, I don't want to spend an hour and a half on a run just to start all the way over because I didn't max out my character's build between my last run. Now, outside of that final boss, the brawler nature of the game was a lot of fun. It tried to inject some roguelike systems into your choosing your path, thus giving you different area bosses depending on your route. It doesn't quite capture that pure randomness of procedural generation that other roguelikes have, but it was a thoughtful design choice. And with enough updates or work on the game, I feel like some of those roguelike elements could be enhanced to make this even more enjoyable. And I should note, for a roguelike game that has a lot of random areas with just a slew of enemies, there were no real dips in frame rate at all, and the game ran really smoothly. Overall, if you're interested and need a new brawler, this is a title you might want to try. The action up until the final boss is really enjoyable. The co-op, both local and online, give that nostalgic arcade feeling, and it has an upgrade system unique to the brawler genre. But if you're a roguelite fan hoping for Hades meets Streets of Rage, you might be left a little disappointed. But if you're interested, check out Absolum, available on PC, PlayStation 4 and 5, and the Switch. Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit the like button. And subscribing goes a long way towards bringing you more content like this. We also have a weekly news podcast called the Indie Radar, where we focus on indie news and upcoming titles. Thanks again for watching from all of us here at The Gamer Buff.
Sitting alone with my thoughts.